So today I'm going to be talking about Last Night in Soho, which is a new movie directed by Edgar Wright, and I gotta admit I haven't seen any of his other movies, so I didn't really know what to expect in terms of style, and I don't really know if this is similar to the other movies he's made, but the reason I wanted to see this is because it has quite a few actors I liked, like Anya Taylor-Joy. I love seeing things about Anya Taylor-Joy that are set in the 60s. That's my favorite new genre. I'm also, if you've seen my channel, you know I like Doctor Who, and I'm a huge fan of the 11th Doctor played by Matt Smith, so when I heard he was in this, I was like, well, I love Matt Smith, gotta see him in this. He was also really good in The Crown, if you've seen The Crown. And apparently he's gonna be in House of the Dragon next year, playing a Targaryen, Daemon Targaryen to be exact, so I'm very excited to see that. It also the final movie to have Diana Rigg in it. And I haven't seen the Avengers from the 60s because I'm only 18 years old and I live in America. So it wasn't really a huge part of, my life the same way Doctor Who was. But I did enjoy her performance in Game of Thrones playing Olenna Tyrell. So, I felt like I ought to see her last movie, and she did great in this movie. I'm not gonna lie, she was awesome in this. I feel like I talk about more of a character later in the movie, but Diana Rigg, I feel like steals the movie for me. It also has Thomas and Mackenzie, who I enjoyed from Jojo Rabbit. So it's nice seeing her be the lead of this movie, because, I don't know, she has a certain natural quality to her that makes her a really good actress. So the movie follows her. Her name is Elle in this movie, Ellie. And the full scene kind of establishes what kind of character she is. She likes fashion, she likes making her own clothes, she likes 60s music, and she wishes she was in the 60s. And she also sees dead people, like her dead mom. She always sees her in the mirror and stuff. Her mom killed herself when she was Ellie's age. Well, a little bit older than Ellie, when Ellie was a kid. Uh, and it's kind of foreshadowed like, the fashion life isn't for everybody, like your mother. So, that's important setup. But I feel like they don't really delve much into that. They kind of keep it a lot more ambiguous, which I enjoy to a certain extent. So Ellie lives in the country, but she leaves home to study fashion in this really prestigious school in London. But all of her like roommates are bitches, the very shallow, toxic bitches. And she's just like, yeah, I don't want to leave. So she just kind of fucks off and moves into this creepy apartment ran by Diana Rigg. And the only friend she makes is this guy named John, who I feel like is kind of a blank slate of a character. He doesn't really add much to the plot of the movie. I feel like I don't know. He's like the male version of the typical female love interest whose only purpose in the movie is to support the male character. So they kind of like gentle bent that trope. And it's just as bad when it's gentle bent. I never really liked that trope. But yeah, John doesn't really contribute much to the movie. He's just kind of there. He doesn't really have much of a personality besides being nice. It's probably his like only personality trait. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is a Chibnall character. Characters with only one personality. So, when she moves into this house, Ellie has these, like, she starts having these dreams, or she's transported back in time to the 1960s, and she's at this, like, really nice nightclub, and she dreams she's the single named Sandie, played by the great Anya Taylor-Joy, who's really good in this movie. And Sandie becomes this nightclub singer, and she starts this relationship with Jack, played by Matt Smith, who's the guy who like manages the club. And they like kiss and stuff, and she gets a hickey. So when Sandy wakes up in real life, she discovers the same one on her neck, which means that it's not just a dream. Ooh. So Ellie gets obsessed with this woman from his full dreams. I mean, who wouldn't, Tiny Taylor Joy. But to the point where she actually wants to be her. So she dyes her hair blonde and starts wearing like the type of clothes that she wore in her dreams. And she kind of uses her as an inspiration for like the dresses she makes. And she gets a job at this pub down the street with this red herring man. Like he doesn't really contribute much to the plot, except for being like this red herring of like, he's a bad guy, but he isn't. He's just there for some reason, and then he dies, and he doesn't contribute anything to the plot. Um, and she keeps dreaming, and she realizes that Sandie's life isn't as perfect as it seems, kind of David Lynch like. And Jack starts to like pimp her out to make money, and she's like sleeping with like 20 different guys, and she basically becomes a prostitute, but not in a dignified Game of Thrones way, more of just like a prostitute. So Ellie starts seeing ghosts of Jack and all the other men who abused Sandie, and she goes to this Halloween party with her bland boyfriend, but the spirits arrive there and they start following her, and she has a vision of Jack murdering Sandie, and she's like, wait a minute, that creepy silver-haired man who does nothing, he looks a lot like Jack. I think that's him. So she goes to the police and she's like, she tells them all the stuff that's happened, and of course they don't take her seriously because, like, you know, dream logic doesn't work in the real world. It should. That'd be interesting, but it doesn't. So she goes to the library and reads all these newspaper reports, and she couldn't find Sandy's model, but she finds a lot of other stories about local men who vanished without a trace. And this was actually really nice foreshadowing for the end of the movie. But this library scene is actually probably one of the most intense scenes in the movie. My favorite scene in the movie, probably, is when she's like surrounded by these spirits and she like trying to run away from them, and she tries to stab one of them, but she actually stabs that bitsy girl from the dorm room instead, and she's like, she just kind of runs away, and I feel like, how come she wasn't arrested after that? She stabbed somebody. Now, of course, it wasn't fatal, but she stabbed somebody. How come she wasn't like arrested, taken to like a mental hospital? Uh, I don't know. It's weird that she kind of forgave her at the end of the movie, though. That's weird. That's a very strange like thing that happened in the movie, and it's never really like referenced or taken seriously again. Um, so she confronts the mysterious old guy, and he's like, I didn't kill Sandie, and then he just dies. He does nothing, and then he dies. I feel like this actor's kind of underused. I've seen him around. I don't know who he is, but like I feel like I've seen him in something before. And this whole like his whole character's a red herring because we find out that he's actually a police officer who was trying to get Ellie out of the prostitution life, but he doesn't. He just kind of dies. Um, so what was really the point of his character? Like what was the point of him? Besides being a red herring. He doesn't really function much in the plot. So Ellie's like, yeah, fuck this. I'm going back to the country, and she goes back to Diana Rigg's house to be like, yeah, I'm gonna leave. And this is when Diana Rigg makes her a cup of tea, and she's like, detective came by asking about Sandy's model, and she's like, well, fuck you, I am Sandie, and I killed all those men with my knife, and I buried them under the floorboards, Edgar Allan Poe style, or if you're a modern hip kid like me, Mr. Krabs burying the boots underneath the Krusty Krab. Uh, so yeah, she looks apparently like sees this kind of a serial killer who lures men to her room and kills them. And she's like, "Fuck you! I'm gonna kill you too. I poisoned you, and I'm gonna kill your boyfriend too." But unfortunately, she accidentally lights her record players on fire, and it pretty much like the whole house goes up in flames. She stabs him. She stabs the boyfriend. I feel like the boyfriend should have died because it would have increased the emotional stakes. But I feel like the end of this movie doesn't really have any stakes. Ellie's like she's like trying to stab Ellie as he walks up the stairs. A really interesting scene, like because it kind of keeps flashing back between Diana Rigg and Anya Taylor-Joy. So that's a really interesting scene. And she runs up to her bedroom and she sees like all the victims, and they're like, "Kill her! Kind of like that episode of SpongeBob where Gary's like old lady Arnold. Oh, he sees like all the snails shells and they're like run. It's kind of like that, but a little bit more seriously. She's like, no, I won't kill this old lady. So Diana Rigg enters the room and she has this whole 180. Well, instead of wanting to kill her for no reason, she wants to kill herself for no reason. And she's, Ellie stops her, and Matt Smith's ghost stops her. Well, slaps her pretty much. And Ellie's like, I understand why you killed these men. And she's like, okay, you gotta save yourself, Ellie. I don't want to kill you and your bland boyfriend anymore, even though I hate men and that's my whole deal. So I'm gonna have this whole 180 and just kind of like get burned alive by the fire. And instead of like trying to rescue her or anything, Ellie's just like, okay. So I don't know. There's a few things wrong with the scene. One, John doesn't contribute much to the plot. Because nothing has like high stakes with him or his character. He doesn't really have a personality besides being nice. When he gets stabbed, he lives. Ellie lives. So it's a very like convenient end of the movie, which is kind of upsetting because the first hour and a half was like really interesting. And it's a very like happy ending where everything's tied up with this bow. Ellie's successful dressmaker now, and her grandma and her bland boyfriend are all happy. And she looks in the mirror and she sees her dead mom, but then she also sees Sandie, and she waves at her and blows her a kiss, and then that's the end of the movie. I would hate to see her in like my meals because A, she killed like 20 people, and B, she tried to stab me and poison me. Also, how come the poison didn't really weaken her? Like, it didn't really do anything. I mean, I know poison's kind of a slow thing, but like, once Diana Rigg was like, fuck you, I poisoned you. And then she was just like, I feel like she'd have enough time to reach the police or the medical people. So the poison didn't really have much to do with anything. Like, if I was Diana Rigg, I would have just stabbed her and been done with it. So this is not a perfect movie, by any means, except I do really enjoy the soundtrack. It really evokes 60s London, and I love the way the 60s scenes are directed, like especially the meals and the way like she sees herself in the meal. It looks really cool. Also like when she's dancing with Matt Smith, and every other shot like changes between the two actresses. That's a really cool scene. So like there's a lot to love about this movie, but the ending kind of I wouldn't say it ruins it for me, but it definitely drags it down a bit. So I'm gonna give this movie a C. Like it's not like I regretted watching the movie. Not that the performances were great, the music was great, the directing was great, and it was a nice mystery. The ghosts were really scary, but the ending definitely let it down. What do you guys think about this movie? Um, is this your second favorite thing this past year about Anya Taylor-Joy living in the 60s? It so is mine. Uh, I'll see you guys next time. We'll be talking about episode 4 of Doctor Who Flux, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.